Hi guys, welcome back. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use the pear-shaped body type we learned earlier to create a goblin. We're going to skip the brainstorm process and start to work directly on the final pose. So I'm going to draw it again on the canvas. Let's get to it. The first thing we'll do is create a new layer. The brush I'm going to use to sketch is the same one I used in the previous lesson, number 36 with some adjustments. Have a look at the properties of the previous video if you need to. So let's start with our pear. The pear contains the two main parts of the body, which are the thorax and the pelvis. So divide both of these with your brush so you know where they are. Sketch the head and the limbs and the pose that you selected. Remember that we're now only working on the skeleton of the drawing, so we don't need to focus on any details yet. Keep the details for later and concentrate on the action lines and the structure. The forearms, as I explained in the previous lesson, are quite big, as I want our character to look strong. Although we're working on a slim character, we can still add strength to some areas, so in this case, the arms. We're drawing a goblin, so I'm going to exaggerate the ears and the nose. It's good that with grotesque characters you exaggerate certain parts of the anatomy. This way they become more fun and charismatic. Every magical creature has their own defining features. Have a look at different drawings and illustrations to see what they are. I'll keep adding more and more detail to our character's anatomy now. Highlight the muscles and the areas beneath the skin. We'll draw the clothes later, when the body is more defined. Now we can start to add some clothes and props to our character. As I said, it's a good idea to use reference images for these elements. You can add all kinds of things. Rips, tears, patches, rope, jewellery. Anything that gives an insight into your character's background is always great for your drawing. Always keep in mind the perspective of the pose you're drawing. Every element has to fit in the space, so visually it makes sense. I'm going to draw the facial features now and the character's expression. Think about what your character's like when you're drawing their face. It's not the same thing to draw a friendly face than an angry or a grumpy one. The personality of your goblin has to be reflected in the drawing. So I recommend you exaggerate the features and the expression so it can be understood easily. Look at yourself in the mirror and pull faces so you can copy the expressions onto your drawing. Remember that when you're working on grotesque characters, exaggerated shapes work really well. They add life to the drawing. You could draw enormous hands, a really big or very tiny nose, giant eyes or really little ones, anything really. Experiment different options when you're sketching and pick what you like the most. I've decided to draw the feet with some big claws to give my character a wild and brutish look. Making the feet of magical creatures more animal-like can be a good resource to make your character more original. Search for anatomical references of different animals, made-up creatures, or people to find inspiration for your illustration. Whenever we see fantastical or mythological creatures, we notice the references taken directly from existing animals or combining different parts. You can always combine elements until you get all sorts of strange creatures. Try creating your own fantastical anatomies. Gradually, we'll add more clothing to our character. Remember that the clothes must follow the lines we traced in the anatomy to respect the shapes. Think that the material falls with its own weight, so if it's light, it adapts to the shape of the body. That's why the lines of the clothing should match the areas on the body, and the creases should follow the direction of these. Every item of clothing or detail that you draw needs to have its own space inside the drawing. This means that you need to respect the volume that each thing occupies without overlapping the elements. Draw basic shapes first if you're not entirely sure of the space the elements occupy. I'm not too sure about the eyes, so I'm going to change them a little. You can redraw the areas you're unsure about as many times as you like. We're still in the sketching phase. The aim is to make your drawing convince you 100%. So erase and redo anything you think you need to change. I'd like to add a weapon. I thought a big bone might be interesting. So I'm going to try and place it in both hands and see where it works better. As you see, it doesn't work so well in the right hand, so I'll draw it in the left, trying not to lose the line of the feet. Lower the opacity of the layer and create a new one to continue adding detail to the drawing. Gradually add the anatomy of the face and other areas of the body. We're defining the drawing now, so you should start to be more precise. Search for references of anatomy to add the details. These tend to be the most complicated parts of the drawing. Also, add in all the details of the clothes and the decoration. Give them shape and volume so they make sense within the space. Remember, it's important to apply the correct texture to each part. Any metal should obviously look like metal. I just mean that we need to differentiate the material with the strokes we draw and also with the volume. So metal or wood won't have the same thickness, for example, as fur or rope or skin. I'm also going to draw some tears and some patches on our goblin's clothes. Any little detail like this will make your drawing more interesting. However, as always, make sure everything is composed properly and balanced. This is important because you could lose the viewer's attention. Drawing creases is a great tool to give some texture to the character. For example, the creases in a leather material will be much harder than silk. You need to consider things like this so the clothes are convincing. Have a look at different materials, maybe around your home, and see what sort of creases and texture each one produces. You can add lines that highlight the volume in certain areas, like I'm doing here on the nose. Some parts have abrupt changes which you can always reinforce with fine lines. This isn't necessary, but it can help in certain situations to explain your drawing. I'm going to draw the eyes again. It's important that you're satisfied with your drawing, so always change whatever you need to. Ask for a second opinion if you're not sure or you can't really see where you're going wrong. This is always a good resource, as maybe a fresh pair of eyes can see the mistakes that you couldn't. I'm going to add some shadow to explain the changes in level or the empty spaces. This is just an artistic tool to enrich the effect of the pencil. There are many ways to shade your drawing. You can use fine lines, lines with gradient, or just flat as I'm doing. Just decide which style fits in best with you. Once you've finished your drawing, it's time to arrange it. So I'm going to use the background I created in the previous lesson. First, I'll create a layer with a neutral colour so you can see the colour of the line better when I adjust it. With the eyedropper tool, select the oak colour we used before and transfer this to the new background. Now press Ctrl U and modify the colour of the line just as you did in the last lesson. Once this is done, transfer the background we had to our new canvas and then you're done. So now you have your goblin. You've learned how to apply the pear-shaped body to a character. Now all that's left is the athletic body shape. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and I'll see you for the next one.